The alien ship floated in the darkness of space like a silver flower. Ambassador Hyun-woo stood inside it, looking through the window at the stars. His heart beat fast. This was the day humans would meet aliens for the first time. He wore his best suit and tried to look calm, but his hands were shaking. Next to him stood Commander Da-yoon. She was the captain of the human ship called Indomitable Spirit. She was young but very smart. Her dark eyes watched everything carefully. She touched the weapon on her belt without thinking. It was a habit from her military training. The alien who met them was called Velthar. They had forearms and skin that looked like crystal. Velthar was a scientist who studied other species. When Velthar saw the humans, their crystal skin changed color slightly. Hyun-woo did not know what that meant. Another alien appeared. This one was very old and moved slowly. His name was High Counselor Maresk. He led the Galactic Federation, which was like a government for many alien species. Maresk looked at the humans with eyes that had seen many things. The meeting room was beautiful. The walls showed images of stars and planets. Soft music played from somewhere. Everything was designed to make visitors feel peaceful. But Hyun-woo noticed that the aliens stayed far away from the humans. They kept a safe distance. Hyun-woo smiled and bowed. He had practiced this many times. He wanted to make a good impression. Commander Da-eun bowed too, but her bow was more stiff. She was a soldier, not a diplomat. High Counselor Maresk spoke first. His voice was strange, like wind through leaves. A computer translated his words into human language. He welcomed the humans and said he was glad to meet them. But his eyes did not look glad. They looked worried. The meeting began with simple questions. Where did humans come from? How many lived on Earth? What did they need? Hyun-woo answered each question carefully. He talked about Earth, about the cities and oceans, about human art and music. He tried to show that humans were civilized and peaceful. Then Velthar asked to see human history. Hyun-woo had prepared a presentation. He showed images and videos on a screen. He showed ancient cities and modern technology. He showed humans building things and exploring space. He was proud of what his species had accomplished. But then the presentation showed human wars. Hyun-woo had included them because he thought it was important to be honest. The images showed soldiers and battles. They showed humans fighting each other with weapons. They showed destruction and then rebuilding. The aliens in the room became very still. Velthar's crystal skin turned a dark color. Other aliens moved back from the screen. One alien made a sound like a gasp. High Counselor Maresk raised his hand and the presentation stopped. Hyun-woo was confused. He looked at Commander Da-yoon. She looked confused too. What had gone wrong? Velthar spoke carefully. They asked if humans really fought each other. Hyun-woo said yes, but that was in the past. Humans had learned to live in peace now. They rarely fought anymore. But Velthar pointed at Commander Da-eun's weapon. Why did she carry it if humans were peaceful? Da-eun touched her belt and said it was for protection. Protection from what? Velthar asked. From anything that might hurt us, Da-eun answered. The room became silent. Finally, High Counselor Maresk spoke. He explained that in the Galactic Federation, no species used violence. When there was a problem, they talked about it. When there was danger, they moved away from it. Fighting was something that animals did, not civilized beings. Hyun-woo tried to explain. He said humans believed in protecting the weak. They believed in standing up to bullies. They believed that sometimes you had to fight to keep people safe. These were good things, he said, but the aliens did not understand. To them, choosing to fight was choosing to be savage. It meant you had failed to be civilized. They looked at the humans like they were dangerous animals in a cage. Commander Da-eun tried to help. She explained that human ships had weapons because space was dangerous. There might be hostile aliens or pirates or natural dangers. Being prepared was smart, not savage. Velthar asked about human entertainment. Hyun-woo showed them movies and games. Many of them had fighting in them. Some showed wars. Others showed heroes defeating villains with force. The aliens watched with growing horror. Do human children play fighting games? Velthar asked. Yes, Hyun-woo said. It helps them learn and grow. Do humans teach their young about past wars? Yes, Da-eun said. So they remember the cost of violence and try to avoid it. Do humans have monuments to soldiers who fought? Yes, both humans said together. To honor those who protected others. Every answer made the aliens more afraid. They saw a species that celebrated violence, that prepared for it, that taught their children about it. They saw a species that was completely different from anything in the Federation. High Counselor Maresk said the meeting needed to end. The Federation would need time to think about humanity. He thanked them for coming, but asked them to return to their ship. His voice was polite, but his meaning was clear. The aliens wanted the humans to leave. Hyunwoo and Da-eun walked back to their shuttle. Neither spoke until they were alone. Then Hyunwoo asked what had happened. Why were the aliens so afraid? Da-eun looked out the window at the alien ship. She said quietly that the aliens had probably never met a species like humans before, a species that knew how to fight, a species that was good at it, a species that did not see violence as unthinkable. Back on the indomitable spirit, Da-eun played the recording of the meeting. She watched the aliens' faces when they saw human history. She watched them step back, watched their fear. She turned to her crew and said something that made them all think. They are afraid of us, she said, not because we attacked them, not because we threatened them, but because we can, because we know how to fight and they do not, because we carry weapons and they do not, because we are willing to use violence to protect what matters, and they cannot imagine doing that. Lieutenant Ji-won, the young tactical officer, asked if that was bad. Daeun thought for a moment. She said she did not know yet, but she knew the aliens would be watching humans very carefully from now on. On the alien ship, Velthar was writing a report. They described everything they had seen. The humans were intelligent and seemed reasonable, but they had something the Federation had never encountered in a spacefaring species. They had kept their capacity for violence even as they became advanced. They had not evolved past it. They had kept it deliberately. High Counselor Mirask called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss the human problem. That was what they called it now. The human problem. Resk showed them the same videos Hyunwoo had shown. The council members reacted just as badly. Some wanted to quarantine humanity immediately. Others wanted to study them from a safe distance. A few brave ones suggested trying to understand why humans were this way, but they all agreed on one thing. Humanity was dangerous, not dangerous like a predator or a storm. Dangerous like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before, because humans could choose to be violent. They could think about it, plan it, prepare for it, and they did all this while still being kind and creative and intelligent. That combination terrified the aliens. An intelligent species that could hurt others was rare. An intelligent species that would hurt others to protect the innocent was impossible to understand. The aliens had built their entire civilization on the idea that violence was always wrong. Humans suggested that sometimes it might be necessary. Velthar sat alone in their quarters thinking. They had spent their whole life studying alien species. They thought they understood what made civilizations work. But humans broke all the rules. They should not exist. A violent, intelligent species should have destroyed itself long ago. Yet humans had not only survived but thrived. They had built beautiful things while still keeping their weapons close. How was that possible? That was the question Velthar needed to answer. And they knew that to answer it, they would need to watch humans more closely. They would need to see what humans did when faced with real danger. They would need to understand not just what humans could do, but why they chose to do it. In the darkness of space, two ships faced each other. One was filled with aliens who had forgotten how to fight. The other was filled with humans who hoped they would never have to. Either side knew that very soon. They would discover which approach was better for survival in a dangerous galaxy. 3 months passed after the first meeting. The Federation kept talking with humans, but the fear never went away. Then something happened that changed everything. A planet called Viridian 7 sent out a distress call. The planet had a colony with 50,000 people living on it. These were not humans. They were different alien species from the Federation. They grew food and mined minerals from the rocks. It was a peaceful place, but something had gone wrong. The mining machines broke in a bad way. Now dangerous asteroids were falling toward the planet. The defense shields that protected the colony from space rocks were failing. The people were in danger. That was not the worst part. The broken defenses had been noticed by pirates. These pirates were called the Draknari. They were big and mean, and they stole from weak planets. They had ships with powerful weapons. When they heard about Viridian 7, they started flying toward it. They would arrive in 3 days. High Counselor Maresk called an emergency meeting. All the important aliens gathered to decide what to do. They looked at the numbers and the facts. They made a plan. The plan was simple. They would send ships to evacuate the colonists. They would move people to other planets where it was safe. They calculated that they could save 42,000 people. 8,000 would be left behind because there was not enough time to save everyone. Ambassador Hyunwoo was at the meeting. He listened to the plan with growing shock. Finally, he stood up and asked the question that seemed obvious to him. Why not defend the colony? Why not fight the pirates and save everyone? The room became quiet. The aliens looked at him like he had said something crazy. High Counselor Maresk explained slowly, as if talking to a child. The Federation did not fight. Fighting caused death and suffering. Evacuation was safer. Yes, some would die, but fewer than if they fought. Hyunwoo could not believe what he was hearing. They were going to abandon 8,000 people because fighting scared them. He asked if they had weapons or soldiers. Maresk said they had defense shields and warning systems, but nothing to actually fight with. They had never needed such things. Commander Da-Yoon was listening from the human ship. When she heard this, she made a decision. She opened a communication channel to the meeting. Her face appeared on the alien screens. She spoke clearly and firmly. She said humans could help. The Indomitable Spirit and 2 other human ships were close enough to reach Viridian 7 before the pirates. They could defend the colony. They could save all 50,000 people, not just 42,000. The aliens looked horrified. Let humans fight on their behalf? Use violence to solve a problem? That went against everything they believed. Some council members said no immediately. Others looked uncertain. Observer Velthar stood up. They had been studying humans for months. They showed data about human military strength. The information shocked the council. Human ships had weapons that could destroy other ships. Humans trained for combat like other species trained for art. Humans had entire books about strategy and tactics in war. But Velthar also showed something else. Humans had rules about fighting. They had laws that said you could not hurt prisoners or civilians. They had systems to punish soldiers who did wrong things. They thought very carefully about when violence was acceptable. This made some council members less afraid. Lieutenant Ji-won appeared on screen next to Commander Da-eun. She was young but very smart about tactics. She showed the council 3 different battle plans. Each plan would defeat the pirates while keeping the colonists safe. She had already thought of everything. This scared the aliens even more. Ji-won talked about fighting the way they talked about science or art. It was normal to her. She could plan a battle as easily as planning a party. The aliens realized humans did not just have the ability to fight. They were good at it. The debate went on for hours. Some aliens said this was their chance to see if humans could be trusted. Others said this was too dangerous. What if humans decided to take over after defeating the pirates? What if humans hurt the colonists by accident? Hyunwoo made a speech. He talked about the 8,000 people who would die if they did nothing.
He asked if the Federation's morals were truly moral if innocent people had to die for them.
He said humans were not perfect, but they would rather try and fail than not try at all. Finally, High Counselor Maresk made the decision. He agreed to let humans try. But there were conditions. Humans must use minimum force. They must try to scare the pirates away, not destroy them. They must accept all responsibility if things went wrong. And Observer Velthar must go with them to watch and report everything. Velthar volunteered immediately. This surprised everyone, including Velthar's own people. Velkrans always avoided danger. But Velthar knew this was important. If they wanted to understand humans, they needed to see humans in action. The 3 human ships prepared to leave. Commander Da-Yoon welcomed Velthar aboard the Indomitable Spirit. She showed them to the observation deck, where they could watch everything safely. Velthar noticed that Da-Yoon did not seem excited or eager. She seemed serious and a little sad. Around the ship, the crew was working. They checked weapons and shields. They reviewed the battle plans. They prepared medical supplies for injuries. Everything was done efficiently and quietly. There was no shouting or celebrating. These people were preparing for something they did not want to do but would do anyway. Velthar watched Lieutenant Ji-won at her station. The young woman was running calculations on her computer. Numbers and diagrams filled her screens. Velthar asked what she was doing. Ji-won explained that she was finding the best way to disable the pirate ships without killing too many pirates. Velthar was confused. Why did she care about pirate lives? They were the enemy. Ji-won looked at Velthar and said something that stayed with them forever. She said that pirates were still people. They had families and lives. Just because they were doing bad things did not mean they deserved to die if there was another way. This confused Velthar even more. Humans could fight, but they did not want to kill. Humans had weapons, but they tried not to use them. Humans prepared for battle, but they hoped it would not come. Every piece of information about humans seemed to contradict the previous piece. Dr. Tae Yang visited Velthar in their quarters. The doctor was gentle and kind. He asked if Velthar needed anything. He checked to make sure they were comfortable. Velthar asked him why he was being so nice when they were about to go into battle. Tae Yang smiled sadly. He said that kindness was more important before battle, not less. He said that humans tried very hard to remember that even enemies were people. They tried to remember that violence was a tool, not a solution. They tried to remember compassion even when doing difficult things. The ships jumped into hyperspace. They would arrive at Viridian 7 in one day. During that day, Velthar walked around the ship and watched the crew. They noticed something interesting. The humans were not acting like warriors preparing for glory. They were acting like workers preparing for a hard job. Some crew members looked nervous. Some looked determined. Some looked sad. But none looked happy about the coming fight. That seemed strange to Velthar. Humans were supposedly violent. Should they not be excited about battle? Velthar asked Commander Dayun about this. Dayun was standing on the bridge looking at the stars through the window. She was quiet for a long time before answering. Then she said something that made Velthar start to understand. She said that humans were not violent by nature. They were protective by nature. The violence was just a tool they used when protection required it. She said that every human on this ship would rather be exploring or building or making art. But 50,000 people needed help, and humans could help them, so they would. Velthar asked if she was afraid. Dayun nodded. She said she was always afraid before a fight. Fear kept you careful. Fear reminded you that what you were doing was serious. Only fools went into battle without fear. Then why do it? Velthar asked. If you are afraid and do not want to fight, why not let the evacuation happen? Dayun looked at Velthar with tired eyes. She said that fear was not a good reason to abandon people who needed help. She said that being afraid and doing the right thing anyway was called courage. She said that humans had learned long ago that some things were worth being afraid for. The ship's alarm sounded. They were approaching Viridian 7. It was time. Commander Dayun walked to her command chair and sat down. She took a deep breath. Then she opened a channel to the colony below and told them not to be afraid. Help had arrived. Velthar watched the view screen show the planet getting closer. Somewhere in the distance, 5 pirate ships were coming, and 3 human ships were preparing to stop them. Velthar did not know what would happen next, but they knew they were about to see something no Federation citizen had ever seen before. They were about to watch humans fight. 2 weeks after the battle at Viridian 7, news had spread across the entire galaxy. Everyone was talking about what the humans had done. The reactions were mixed and complicated. High Counselor Miresk called a full meeting of the Federation Council. All 47 member species sent representatives. The giant meeting hall was full of aliens of every shape and size. They had gathered to discuss one question. What should they do about humanity? The debate started immediately. Some council members said humans had saved 8,000 lives that would have been lost. The math was simple. Humans had achieved the best possible outcome. Other members argued that using violence, no matter the result, went against everything the Federation believed. A third group was simply afraid. If humans could defeat 5 pirate ships so easily, what would stop them from attacking Federation worlds? Power without trust was dangerous, and trust took time to build. Observer Velthar presented their full report to the Council. They showed videos from the battle. The Council watched in silence as the human ships disabled the pirates with surgical precision. Many Council members looked uncomfortable. Some looked amazed. A few looked horrified. One moment from the video stood out. Lieutenant Jiwan had calculated 17 ways to destroy the pirate fleet. The computer showed all 17 options on her screen, but she chose an 18th option that disabled the pirates instead. She had deliberately chosen the harder path that saved enemy lives. This started a new debate. Were humans more dangerous because they could be violent, or were they more trustworthy because they chose restraint? The Council could not agree. Then something unexpected happened. The survivors from Viridian 7 asked to speak to the Council. 50,000 colonists wanted to share their experience. The council agreed to hear from them. A mother from the colony appeared as a hologram. She had 3 children. She told the council that she watched human ships position themselves between her family and the pirates. The humans did not run. They did not hide. They just stood there like a wall protecting everyone behind them. She had never seen such behavior before. An engineer spoke next. He said that after the battle, Dr. Tae Yang came to help injured pirates, the same people who had just tried to harm the colony. The doctor worked for 16 hours straight, treating enemy wounded. The engineer asked him why he cared about people who were their enemies. The doctor looked confused. He said they were not enemies anymore. They were patients. A young student asked a question that made the whole council go silent. She said that without humans, 8,000 colonists would have died. The Federation was going to abandon them, but humans, who were strangers from far away, refused to accept that outcome. Which civilization was truly moral? The one that followed principles and let people die, or the one that broke principles to save people? The council had no good answer to that question. They sat quietly, thinking about what the young student had said. Earth sent a new ambassador to help explain humanity's position. His name was Ambassador Ki-jun. He was a philosopher and teacher. Where Ambassador Hyunwoo was practical and direct, Ki-jun was thoughtful and careful with words. Ki-jun spoke to the council. He said that yes, humans were dangerous. They did not deny it, but every civilization had to decide how to handle dangerous capabilities. The Federation chose to eliminate the capacity for violence. Humans chose to keep that capacity but control it through laws and morals. He explained that humans spent thousands of years learning how to control violence. Every human society taught children that hurting others was wrong. Every human government had laws punishing those who used violence wrongly. Every human story taught lessons about using power responsibly. The question, Ki-jun said, was not whether humans were dangerous. They were. The question was whether that danger could exist alongside the Federation's principles of peace and cooperation. Humans believed it could, but the Federation would have to decide if they agreed. While the Federation debated, the Draknari pirates were having their own crisis. For the first time ever, someone had fought back against them successfully. The pirate leaders met to discuss what this meant for their future. Some pirates wanted to avoid humans completely. They said humans were too dangerous to fight. Others wanted to study human tactics and learn how to beat them. The pirates were split and arguing among themselves. The Draknari sent a message to the Federation. They said that if the Federation did not control their new human allies, the Draknari would consider them a threat. This message was meant to scare the Federation into restricting humanity, but the message had the opposite effect. Several council members who were unsure about humans suddenly saw them as useful. The Draknari had been a problem for decades. Maybe humans were the solution to that problem. Observer Velthar was having personal struggles with everything they had learned. They had spent their whole life believing violence was always wrong, but they had watched humans save 50,000 lives through controlled violence. How could something wrong produce something so right? Velthar asked Commander Daun for a private meeting. They met in a quiet room with windows showing the stars. Velthar asked the question that had been troubling them. How do you live with the ability to kill? Daun thought carefully before answering. She said humans did not ignore or celebrate their violent capabilities. They acknowledged it as part of their nature and built systems to control it. Every human child learned the difference between defending the weak and bullying the helpless. Every soldier learned rules about when violence was acceptable. Every court punished those who used violence wrongly. She explained that humans lived with this capability the same way anyone lived with any dangerous tool. Through constant attention, moral education, and accountability. Humans were not perfect at it, but they tried every day. Velthar asked another question. Do you fear becoming the very thing you fight against? Do you worry that using violence will change you into something bad? Dayan nodded seriously. Yes, she said. Every single day. That fear is what keeps us honest. The moment we stop questioning our actions is the moment we become true monsters. The worry itself is protection against becoming what we fear. This conversation helped Velthar understand something important. Humans were not careless with violence. They were extremely careful. They thought about it constantly. They worried about it deeply. That care and worry was why they could be trusted. After weeks of debate, High Counselor Muresk called for a vote. The council had three choices. They could give humans full membership with no restrictions. They could give humans limited membership with rules about military action. Or they could quarantine humans to their own space and avoid them. The vote was close, but the testimony from Viridian 7 colonists had changed enough minds. The council chose the second option. Humans would be associate members of the Federation. They could participate in most activities, but any military action would need council approval first. Ambassador Kijun accepted this decision gracefully. He understood the Federation's caution. Trust had to be earned over time. Humans were willing to prove themselves worthy of that trust. After the council session ended, Observer Velthar and Ambassador Hyunwoo met on an observation deck. They looked at the stars together through the transparent walls. The view was beautiful and peaceful. Velthar said they were beginning to understand humans. Humans carried darkness within them, the capacity for terrible things, but they did not let that darkness control them. They acknowledged it, controlled it, and used it only when absolutely necessary. Hyunwoo smiled slightly. He said that every intelligent being carried some darkness. Humans were just more honest about theirs. They did not pretend they were incapable of violence. They admitted it and took responsibility for it. Velthar asked one more question. If someone threatens the Federation again, will humans fight for us? Will you risk your lives to protect aliens you barely know? Hyunwoo looked out at the stars. His voice was quiet but firm when he answered. Yes, because protecting those who cannot protect themselves is the right thing to do. Because we have the power to help, and that creates a responsibility. Because that is what it means to be civilized, not despite our capacity for violence, but because of how we choose to use it. Velthar thought about this for a long time. They realized that humans had a completely different definition of civilization than the Federation. The Federation thought civilization meant eliminating violence. Humans thought civilization meant controlling violence and using it justly. Both views had merit. Both had costs. The galaxy had changed. Humans were now part of the galactic community. They brought with them capabilities that frightened many species, but they also brought a willingness to stand and protect others. The Federation would have to learn to live with both aspects of humanity. Observer Velthar went back to their quarters and continued writing. They had much more to document. This was just the beginning of humanity's story in the galaxy. There would be more challenges, more tests, more opportunities for humans to prove themselves. Velthar wanted to record all of it, because they knew they were witnessing something historic. They were watching a new kind of species join the galactic community, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. 6 months passed. Humans were now part of the Federation, but tensions with the Draknari pirates had grown worse. The pirates were raiding more colonies on the edges of Federation space. The Federation's response was the same as always. Evacuate and abandon the colonies. But now the Draknari had a new leader. His name was Warlord Draka, and he was much smarter than the other pirates. He understood that humans were a threat to the entire Draknari way of life. If the Federation learned to defend itself using human methods, the pirates would have no more victims. Draka made a plan. He would prove that humans were dangerous and could not be trusted. He would show the Federation that using human military power would only lead to death and suffering. The target was a planet called Harvest Prime. 2 million people lived there from 12 different species. It was a farming world that grew food for many Federation colonies. The planet was important but not heavily defended. 20 Draknari warships appeared in the Harvest Prime system. It was the largest pirate fleet anyone had ever seen. But Draka's orders were careful. Attack only military and government buildings. Avoid civilian casualties. Make it clear that people would only die if someone interfered. The message was meant for humans. If they fought back and civilians died in the crossfire, it would be humanity's fault. The Federation would blame humans for the deaths. Draka was setting a trap. High Counselor Muresk called an emergency session. The council had to decide quickly: begin evacuation and lose the planet, or authorize humans to fight and risk civilian casualties. Many council members argued against military action. One elderly counselor said that if they allowed humans to fight, they would become responsible for any deaths. The Federation would lose its moral standing. It would become complicit in violence. Ambassador Kijun stood up. He pointed out that inaction was also a choice. Abandoning 2 million people to live under pirate occupation was a form of violence. The Federation was just using distance to avoid feeling responsible. The debate became heated. Some species threatened to leave the Federation if humans were authorized to act. Other species threatened to leave if humans were not authorized. The unity of the Federation itself was at risk. Earth sent its highest military officer to address the council. Admiral Bora was older than the other human representatives. She had gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. But when she spoke, everyone listened. She told the council the uncomfortable truth. Warlord Draka had laid a trap specifically for humans. He wanted to prove that human military power would lead to civilian deaths. He wanted the galaxy to fear humans as much as they feared pirates. Bora said she would not lie to them. If humans fought the Draknari fleet, there was a chance civilians might be caught in crossfire. War was unpredictable. Precision was good, but not perfect. She could not guarantee 0 civilian casualties. But she continued, if they did nothing, those 2 million people would live under occupation. The pirates would strip the planet of resources over months or years. Some would die from hunger. Others would be taken as slaves. Was that outcome better just because it happened slowly? She finished with a hard truth. The Federation wanted security without the moral complexity of defending it. But that was not how reality worked. Every civilization eventually had to decide what it was willing to fight for. Commander Dayun proposed an alternative plan. Give her 48 hours. She would infiltrate the system with a small battle group. They would coordinate with local resistance fighters. They would disable the Draknari fleet from within using surgical strikes. No orbital bombardment. No mass battles. High Counselor Muresk asked the obvious question. Could she guarantee 0 civilian casualties? Dayun looked him in the eyes and said no. She could promise to do everything possible to protect civilians. She could promise tactics that minimized risk. But anyone who guaranteed 0 casualties was lying. That honesty, strangely, made the council trust her more. She was not trying to manipulate them with false promises. She was being realistic about what was possible. Observer Velthar was asked to accompany the human forces as an observer. This would put them in danger, something Velkrans never chose willingly. But Velthar remembered the colonists at Viridian 7. They remembered Dayun's words about choosing what mattered. Velthar accepted the assignment. The human battle group entered the Harvest Prime system using stealth technology. They went undetected by the Draknari fleet. Commander Daun's ship, the Indomitable Spirit, led 3 other vessels into position. Lieutenant Jiwan coordinated with resistance fighters on the planet. These were Federation civilians who had never considered fighting back before. But human advisors had been teaching them defensive tactics for months. Now they were ready to help. The plan was complex. The resistance would disable the Draknari command center on the ground, while human ships struck the orbital fleet at the same time. The two-front attack would create confusion and prevent coordination. The operation began perfectly. The resistance successfully infiltrated the command center. The human ships began their attack runs. Everything was going according to plan. Then Warlord Draka revealed his real strategy. A second Draknari fleet had been hiding in the outer asteroid belt. These ships emerged and moved to intercept the humans, but their flight path took them directly over the planet's largest city. 500,000 people lived there. If humans engaged this fleet, weapons fire could rain down on civilians below. Draka broadcast a message. Fire on my ships and you will kill 500,000 innocents. Withdraw and I will allow peaceful evacuation. Commander Dayun faced the choice every military leader dreads. Accept tactical defeat that leads to strategic failure, or risk civilian casualties for a chance at victory. Observer Velthar watched her carefully. They expected to see hesitation or panic. Instead, they saw something different. Dayon was thinking. Her mind was working the problem. Lieutenant Jiwan called out possible firing solutions. Admiral Bora transmitted strategic analysis from Earth. Dr. Taeyang reviewed locations of civilian shelters. Ambassador Hyunwoo contacted the local government to begin emergency protocols. Everyone was working together to find a solution. Velthar realized something important. Humans did not freeze when facing moral dilemmas. They worked the problem. They looked for a third option when given 2 bad choices. Commander Dayun broadcast a message to Warlord Draka. She said she would not fire on his ships while they endangered civilians. But she would not withdraw either. Instead, the human ships positioned themselves between the Draknari fleet and the planet. They became a physical shield. If Draka wanted to attack the surface, he would have to go through them first. At the same time, Jiwan coordinated with the ground resistance. They were not attacking pirates. They were evacuating civilians from the threatened areas using underground tunnels the Draknari did not know existed. For 6 hours, the human ships held their position. The Draknari fired on them repeatedly. The ship called Resolute Dawn suffered heavy damage. The ship called Defiant Hope lost 2 crew members when a power system exploded, but the humans did not move. They did not fire back. They simply endured, absorbing damage meant for the civilians below. Velthar had never seen such behavior. These people were choosing to be hurt rather than risk harming innocents. When the civilian evacuation was complete, Commander Daun broadcast a second message. "The civilians are safe now. Let me show you what happens when you threaten them." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ships, no longer constrained by civilian safety, dismantled the Draknari fleet with brutal efficiency. Not by destroying them, but by rendering them unable to fight. Warlord Draka watched his perfect plan collapse. He had thought humans would choose between protecting civilians and achieving victory. He never imagined they would accept damage to themselves to avoid both bad options. He did not understand that humans would sacrifice themselves before risking innocence. This was the moment the galaxy truly began to understand humanity. They were not violent by choice. They were protective by nature. The violence was just the tool. The protection was the purpose. Observer Velthar stood on the damaged bridge of the Indomitable Spirit. Repair crews worked around them. Commander Daun sat in her chair looking exhausted and sad. She was mourning the 2 crew members who had died. Velthar asked why she had risked her ship and crew instead of accepting evacuation. Daun looked at them with haunted eyes. She said those people were not theirs to abandon. Because humans had the power to protect them. Because if they did not stand between innocence and danger, they were not worthy of their capabilities. Velthar began writing their report to the Federation Council. They knew this changed everything. Humans were not just capable of violence. They were willing to suffer violence themselves to protect others. That made them something the galaxy had never seen before. That made them true protectors. The 3 human ships arrived at Viridian 7 6 hours before the pirates. Commander Daun stood on the bridge and looked at the planet below. 50,000 aliens lived down there. They had no weapons and no way to defend themselves. They were completely helpless. Daun gave orders quickly. The ships spread out around the planet in a defensive pattern. They positioned themselves near the big rocks floating in space. These rocks would give them cover. They set up sensors to detect when the pirates arrived. Everything was planned carefully. Observer Velthar watched from a safe spot on the bridge. They had never seen military tactics before. The way the humans moved their ships was like a dance. Every position had a purpose. Every decision was made for a reason. This was not random violence. This was organized and intelligent. Lieutenant Jiwan opened a communication channel to the colony. Her voice was calm and clear. She told the frightened colonists that human ships were there to protect them. She explained what was going to happen. She did not lie or hide the danger. She was honest but reassuring. Many colonists asked why humans were helping. They were strangers from across the galaxy. Why risk their lives for people they did not know? Ambassador Hyunwoo answered from his position on the ship. He said simply that it was the right thing to do. People needed help and humans could give it. That was reason enough. The hours passed slowly. The crew checked and rechecked their systems. Dr. Tae Yang prepared the medical bay for possible injuries. He set up beds and got medicines ready. He worked quietly, his face serious. Velthar noticed that he prepared supplies for treating enemies too, not just humans. Then the sensors detected something. 5 ships appeared from hyperspace. They were big and ugly, covered in armor and weapons. These were the Draknari pirates. They had come to take everything from the colony. The pirate leader opened a communication channel. His voice was rough and mean. He said the colony belonged to him now. Anyone who interfered would be destroyed. This was how pirates always operated. They threatened, and Federation species always ran away. Commander Daun responded. Her voice was steady and cold. She told the pirates to leave immediately. If they did not leave, the humans would make them leave. It was that simple. The pirate leader laughed. He had 5 big ships. The humans had 3 smaller ones. The math was easy. He told his ships to advance toward the planet. He was not worried at all. Then the pirates scanned the human ships more carefully. Their computers started showing strange readings. These ships had weapons the pirates had never seen before, guns that fired metal at incredible speeds, missiles that could track targets, electronic weapons that could shut down systems. The human ships were built for fighting in ways the pirates had not imagined. The pirate leader hesitated, but he had been raiding colonies for years. He had never met anyone who fought back. He decided the humans were bluffing. He fired a warning shot across the bow of the indomitable Spirit. Commander Daun did not fire back immediately. Instead, she sent one more message. She transmitted exact firing calculations, showing where human weapons would hit each pirate ship. She gave them 60 seconds to start leaving. Her tone made it clear this was the final warning. The pirates advanced anyway. The 60 seconds ended. Lieutenant Ji-Wan looked at Commander Daun. Daun took a deep breath and gave the order. Weapons free. What happened next took less than 3 minutes, but observer Velthar would remember every second for the rest of their life. The human ship called Resolute Dawn fired first, but they did not aim at the pirate ships. They aimed at the rocks and debris floating in space. The impact sent thousands of small fragments flying toward the pirates at high speed. The fragments tore through the pirates' sensors like rain through paper. Suddenly, the pirates could not see anything. Before the pirates could react, the ship called Defiant Hope fired electronic pulse weapons. These weapons did not explode or destroy. They just made electricity flow through the pirate ships in wrong ways. Power systems failed. Computers shut down. The pirate ships went dark and silent. Then the indomitable Spirit moved in close. Using railguns that fired metal slugs, Daun's crew carefully shot at the pirate engines. Each shot was precisely placed to disable the ship without killing the crew inside. One pirate ship tried to restart its engines. Another shot made sure they could not. In 3 minutes, all 5 pirate ships were floating helplessly in space. They could not see, could not communicate, and could not move. They were completely defeated. Velthar could not believe what they had seen. The humans had won so easily, but what shocked Velthar even more was how the humans acted after winning. There was no celebration, no cheering. The crew simply went back to work as if they had completed a normal task. Commander Daun opened a channel to the pirate leader. She told him that his ships would be towed to neutral space and released. His injured crew members would receive medical treatment, but he must never return to this sector again. She spoke like a teacher correcting a student, not like a warrior gloating over victory. The pirate leader, still in shock, asked why the humans had not killed them. They could have destroyed all 5 ships easily. Why show mercy? Daun's answer was simple. Because we did not have to. You were defeated. Killing you after that would have been murder, not defense. Velthar realized something important in that moment. Humans were not violent because they enjoyed it. They were violent only when necessary, and they stopped the moment it was no longer necessary. This was completely different from what the Federation had feared. Dr. Tae Yang and his medical team went to the pirate ships to treat the injured. Some pirates had been hurt when their systems failed. Tae Yang worked on them with the same care he would give to humans. One pirate asked him why he was helping. Tae Yang looked confused by the question. You are hurt, he said. I am a doctor. Of course I help. Below on the planet, the 50,000 colonists were safe. All of them. Not 42,000. Not some percentage calculated by computers. All of them. Because humans had been willing to stand and fight when no one else would. The colonists sent messages of thanks to the human ships. Many were crying with relief. Some asked how they could repay the humans. Ambassador Hyunwoo told them there was no debt. Protecting people who needed protection was not a favor. It was a responsibility that came with having power. Observer Velthar started writing their report to the Federation Council. They had so much to say. They had watched humans fight, and it was nothing like they expected. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they had incredible weapons and skills. But they used those things with careful thought and clear purpose. The humans had many chances to kill the pirates. Lieutenant Ji-Wan had calculated 17 different ways to destroy the enemy fleet completely. But the humans chose an 18th way that disabled the pirates instead. That choice revealed everything about human nature. Velthar wrote in their report that humans possessed capabilities far beyond Federation understanding. But those capabilities were controlled by strong moral principles. Humans did not fight for glory or pleasure. They fought to protect those who could not protect themselves, and they stopped fighting the moment the threat was over. Most importantly, Velthar wrote that humans seemed to carry the weight of violence heavily. Commander Daun looked tired after the battle, not energized. Dr. Taeyang looked sad when treating injured pirates. The crew was relieved it was over, not excited that they had won. These were not people who enjoyed violence. These were people who understood its cost. Velthar concluded their report with a controversial statement. Humanity is dangerous, they wrote, but they may be exactly the kind of dangerous the galaxy needs. Because while they can hurt others, they choose to protect others instead. That choice makes all the difference. Commander Daun stood alone on the bridge later that night. She looked at the planet below where people were sleeping safely because of what her crew had done, but she did not feel proud. She felt the weight of responsibility. They had used violence today, even controlled violence. She knew that every time humans did that, they risked becoming what they fought against. Ambassador Hyunwoo found her there. He stood next to her in silence for a while. Then he said that what they did today would change how the galaxy saw humanity. They had proven they could be trusted with power. They had shown that violence could be used justly. Dayun nodded slowly. But she also knew that every time humans fought, they would be judged. Every mistake would confirm the Federation's fears. Every success would bring more responsibility. The burden of being protectors was heavy, and it would only get heavier. Observer Velthar sent their report to the Federation Council. When the council members read it, they would have to decide what to do about humanity. Were humans allies or threats? Were they protectors or dangers? Velthar believed they were protectors, but the council would have to decide for themselves. The 3 human ships prepared to leave Viridian 7. The planet was safe now. The colonists were celebrating, but on the ships the humans were quiet. They had done what needed to be done. Now they had to live with it. That was the human way. Use violence when necessary, but never forget the cost. Win the battle, but carry the weight forever. 3 months after the Battle of Harvest Prime, the human battle group returned to Federation space. But something had changed. The crew members who had fought looked different now. They moved slower. They seemed quieter. Their eyes carried a weight that had not been there before. Observer Velthar noticed these changes immediately. They had been documenting human behavior for almost a year now. They could see that Commander Daun was different. She was more withdrawn. She responded to questions more slowly. Sometimes she would stare at nothing for long periods. Dr. Taeyang recognized what was happening. He had seen it before in other soldiers. This was combat stress. It was the psychological burden that came from making life and death decisions. It was the weight of command. It was the price humans paid for using violence, even necessary violence. The Federation medical staff did not know how to help. Their species rarely experienced combat, so they had no experience treating combat trauma. They could fix physical injuries, but not these invisible wounds. Earth sent a specialist. Dr. Sun-hee was a psychologist who worked specifically with people who had experienced combat. She was gentle but firm. She arrived at the diplomatic station and immediately began working with the human crew members. Velthar asked permission to observe some therapy sessions. They wanted to understand this aspect of humanity too. Commander Daun agreed, saying that maybe the Federation needed to see this. Maybe they needed to understand the real cost of fighting. In one session, Daun broke down crying. She said that 2 crew members had died because of her orders. They had died holding position while taking enemy fire. They had died following her commands. She felt responsible for their deaths. Dr. Sun-hee listened quietly. Then she said that those crew members died protecting 500,000 civilians. They died doing what they had volunteered to do. Their sacrifice was not wasted. It meant something. But they are still dead, Daun said. Yes, Sun-hee agreed. And you will carry that weight forever. This is the price of command. This is the price of capability. The question is not whether you should feel this pain. You should. The question is whether you can carry it without being destroyed by it. Velthar watched this exchange with growing understanding. Humans did not use violence casually. Every act of violence left marks on them. They carried those marks as reminders. The pain was not weakness. It was proof they understood what they were doing. Observer Velthar had spent months compiling everything they had learned into a documentary. The Federation Council requested a private viewing. All the important leaders gathered in a dark room to watch what Velthar had recorded. The documentary had 3 parts. The first part showed human military capabilities, their weapons, their tactics, their efficiency. This was the part that frightened the Council. The humans were incredibly good at fighting. Dangerously good. The second part showed human restraint. It showed the 18 firing solutions Jiwan had considered. It showed the medical care Taiyang gave to enemies. It showed the 6 hours the indomitable spirit held position while being shot. This part confused the Council. Why have such power and not use it fully? The third part showed the cost. It showed Da-Un crying at a funeral. It showed therapy sessions. It showed nightmares and guilt. It showed humans carrying the burden of every decision, every casualty, every necessary act of violence. This part changed everything. The Council realized that humans did not fight without consequences. They carried every decision permanently. This was not a species that viewed combat casually. This was a species that understood the true cost of what they did. High Counselor Maresk invited Ambassador Ki-jun for a private conversation. They sat in a room overlooking the stars. Maresk asked the question that troubled him. Your people suffer terribly from their willingness to fight. Why not abandon violence as we have? Ki-jun thought carefully before responding. He said the universe did not care about moral preferences. Predators existed. Disasters happened. Evil was real. Humans could choose to develop the capability to confront these things, or they could choose to be helpless. They chose capability and accepted the burden. But your people pay such a price, Maresk observed. Is it worth it? Ki-jun looked at the stars. Ask the 50,000 colonists at Viridian 7, he said. Ask the 2 million civilians at Harvest Prime. We pay the price so others do not have to. That is the entire point. Maresk was silent for a long time. Then he spoke slowly. We built our civilization on the principle that all violence is wrong. You suggest that sometimes violence is the least wrong option? Not the least wrong, Ki-jun corrected gently. The necessary response to greater wrong. There is a difference. The Federation Council called Lieutenant Jiwan to testify. They wanted to understand how someone so young could think about violence so systematically. How could she calculate ways to destroy ships as easily as calculating math problems? Jiwan's testimony made the Council uncomfortable. She said she did not enjoy calculating how to fight. She did not take pride in being good at it. But someone had to do this work or innocence would suffer. She was trained for this role. She accepted the responsibility. The burden was hers to carry. A council member asked if she had nightmares about the ships she disabled. Jiwan nodded. Yes, she said. Every night I see the 17 solutions I rejected. Every night I wonder if I made the right choices. Every night I remember that real people were on those ships. But the nightmares are better than the alternative. Better than letting predators harm innocents while I do nothing. This honesty shocked the council. Jiwan was not hiding from the moral weight of her actions. She was carrying it consciously and deliberately. That made her trustworthy in a way they had not expected. Something unexpected happened during this time. Warlord Draka, the pirate leader, sent a message directly to Admiral Bora. It was not a threat. It was a question. How do your people maintain their capability for violence without being consumed by it? My species lives for conquest. We know no other way, but you fight when necessary and then return to peace. How Admiral Bora's response surprised everyone. She offered to send advisors to help the Draknari transition from a raiding economy to a defensive posture, not as conquerors teaching the conquered, but as one warrior culture helping another find a sustainable path. The Federation was shocked by this offer. But Ambassador Hyunwoo explained, humanity knew what it was like to be trapped in cycles of violence. They had spent thousands of years learning how to break those cycles. Why would they not share that knowledge? The Council debated for weeks about humanity's role in the Federation. Finally, they reached a decision. They would establish humanity as official protectors of the Federation, but with conditions. Humans would serve under strict oversight. They would have mandatory psychological support systems. The Federation would help humans bear the cost of protection. This was unprecedented. No species had ever held such a role, but the Council recognized that the galaxy was dangerous. The Federation's passive approach left innocents vulnerable. Humans had proven they could protect others. More importantly, they had proven they understood the moral weight of doing so. Commander Da-Yun stood at a memorial wall in the diplomatic station. 2 names had been added, the crew members who died at Harvest Prime. She touched their names gently, her eyes sad. Observer Velthar approached quietly. They told her that the council had voted. Humans were now officially the Federation's protectors. Da-Yun did not respond immediately. She kept looking at the names on the wall. Finally, she spoke. I hope we are worthy of the trust they are placing in us. Velthar said they had watched humans for nearly a year. They had seen human capabilities and restraint. They had seen human strength and compassion. They had seen humans weep for their enemies and sacrifice for strangers. If any species was worthy of this role, it was humanity. Da-Yun finally looked at them. We will do our best, she said. That is all we can promise. Velthar responded softly. That is exactly why we trust you. Because you know you are not perfect. Because you worry about doing the right thing. Because you carry the weight of your power instead of enjoying it. That awareness is what makes you safe to trust. Da-Yun nodded slowly. She understood now that the burden would never get lighter. Every time humans protected someone, they would pay a price. Every life saved would cost something. But that was acceptable. That was the deal they had made when they chose to be strong enough to protect others. The galaxy had changed. Humans had proven they were not monsters. They were protectors who understood the cost of protection. They were warriors who knew when not to fight. They were powerful beings who chose to use that power carefully, and now they had been given the responsibility to protect an entire galactic civilization. Observer Velthar went back to their quarters and continued documenting. The story was not over. It was just beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more tests, more opportunities for humans to prove themselves. But Velthar believed in them now. They had earned that trust through sacrifice and restraint. They had earned it by understanding that power without wisdom was tyranny, but power with wisdom was protection. 1 year had passed since humanity became the Federation's official protectors. The galaxy looked different now. Changes had happened, both big and small, that no one had expected. The Draknari pirates had split into 3 groups. Some, led by Warlord Draka, were working with human advisors. They were learning to transition from raiding to legitimate work. It was difficult for them, but they were trying. Other Draknari had retreated to the edges of the galaxy, choosing isolation. A few stubborn groups continued raiding, but their numbers grew smaller each month. Federation worlds that used to be abandoned at the first sign of danger were now defended. Human battle groups patrolled border systems. Pirate attacks had dropped dramatically. People who once lived in fear now slept peacefully. But the most surprising change was not in the humans. It was in the other species. They were beginning to study human methods, not to become warriors themselves, but to understand the logic of protecting what mattered. A young Velkran named Kelthas did something unprecedented. They approached Commander Da-Yun and asked to join the human defense forces. This shocked everyone. Velkrans avoided danger by cultural rule. They never chose to put themselves at risk. Da-Yun was skeptical. She asked why Kelthas wanted this life. They had seen what it cost. Why choose such a burden? Kelthas explained that Observer Velthar had shown them something important. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite fear because something mattered more than safety. Kelthas's homeworld had been threatened the year before. Humans had protected it. Now Kelthas wanted to learn how to stand that way. Not just for their own people, but for all people. Da-Yun accepted Kelthas into the training program. They became the first non-human to join. Within months, volunteers from 12 different species followed. They came to learn the principles: protection of the innocent, proportional response, accepting the burden of capability. Observer Velthar completed their multi-year study with a final report. They presented it to the entire Galactic Federation. The conclusion was careful and nuanced. Humanity is dangerous, Velthar wrote. This fact has not changed. What has changed is our understanding of what that danger means. They are dangerous the way fire is dangerous, capable of destruction, but also capable of providing warmth and light. They are dangerous the way a storm is dangerous, powerful and overwhelming, but also cleansing and renewing. They are dangerous the way any powerful force is dangerous, requiring respect and understanding, but not necessarily requiring fear. The key insight, Velthar continued, is this. Humans do not fight because they enjoy violence. They fight because they are willing to pay the price to protect what cannot protect itself. This willingness to bear the cost of their own capabilities is what makes them trustworthy despite their danger. The Federation spent thousands of years believing that the highest moral achievement was eliminating violence. Humanity suggests an alternative. Perhaps the highest moral achievement is the controlled application of violence in service of protection and justice. We feared humans because we saw only their capacity for destruction. Now we understand. That same capacity is what allows them to be protectors. The warrior and the guardian are not opposites. They are two aspects of the same nature. Admiral Bora gave a speech at the graduation ceremony for the first Mixed Species Defense Academy class. The hall was filled with humans and non-humans who had trained together. They all wore the same uniform. They all carried the same responsibility. Bora spoke to them about what it meant to be a protector. When we first made contact with the Federation, she said, we were confused by their fear. We saw ourselves as protectors. They saw us as threats. Both perspectives were partially correct. What we have learned together is that protection requires both capability and restraint. It requires both the power to act and the wisdom to know when not to act. It requires accepting that we will make mistakes and carrying the burden of those mistakes without letting them stop us from trying. You graduates, both human and non-human, are proof that these principles transcend species. You have chosen to develop the capability to defend others. You have accepted the cost that comes with that capability. You have committed to carrying the burden that protection requires. The galaxy is vast and full of wonder. It is also full of danger. We cannot eliminate that danger, but we can stand between it and the innocent. We can be the shield that others need. We can be worthy of the trust placed in us. Lieutenant Ji-Wan had been promoted to commander. She now captained her own vessel called the Sentinel's Promise. Her first assignment was training the new mixed species tactical officers. In her first class, she taught the same principles she had learned. Calculate all options, choose the least destructive path that achieves the objective, accept responsibility for consequences, carry the weight of command with honor. A young student asked if the nightmares ever stopped. Ji-Wan's answer was honest. No, she said, but you learn to carry them. And you learn that the nightmares are the price you pay for saving lives. It is a price worth paying. Warlord Draka met with Admiral Bora on a neutral station. Their conversation showed how far both sides had come. Draka said his people had been predators for 1,000 generations. They knew no other way to live. Humans showed them that strength could protect instead of merely take. Bora acknowledged that the transition was not easy. Humanity spent thousands of years learning this lesson. She did not expect the Draknari to learn it overnight. Draka admitted that some of his people would never accept the change. They would continue raiding until they were stopped. But others were choosing a different path. They were learning to be guardians instead of raiders. Bora said that was all anyone could ask. Not perfection, but effort and honesty about the struggle. Commander Da-Yun, now Captain Da-Yun of the flagship Indomitable Spirit, had found a measure of peace. She still carried the weight of past decisions. She still remembered every casualty. But she understood now that carrying that weight was not a burden. It was proof that she understood the cost of her capabilities. She visited the memorial wall often. More names had been added. Each represented a life given in defense of others. Each represented a choice to stand and protect rather than retreat and survive. Observer Velthar found her there one evening. They stood together in comfortable silence. Finally, Velthar asked if she regretted the path her people had chosen. Da-Yun considered the question carefully. I regret every life lost, she said. I regret every injury inflicted. I regret that we live in a universe where protection sometimes requires violence. But do I regret that we have the capability to protect? No, never. A ceremony was held at the Federation's capital world. A new monument was unveiled. It showed 3 figures standing together. A human in defensive armor, a Velkran in observer robes, a reformed Draknari in peaceful stance. They faced outward, positioned as protectors. The inscription read, "To those who stand between the innocent and the darkness. To those who bear the burden of capability with honor. To those who choose to protect rather than to harm." From a grateful galaxy, High Counselor Muris gave the dedication speech. He had changed over the course of these events. He was less certain that his way was the only moral path. He had learned to accept complexity. A year ago, he said, we feared humanity. We saw them as dangerous and violent. We were not wrong about their capabilities, but we were incomplete in our understanding. What we learned is that danger and safety are not opposites. Sometimes danger is what makes safety possible. Sometimes the capacity for violence is what allows lasting peace. Humanity taught us that being civilized does not mean being helpless. It means being powerful enough to protect others and wise enough to know when not to use that power. It means carrying the burden of capability with honor and humility. Observer Velthar recorded one final documentary entry in private. They spoke their conclusions quietly. I began this study asking why humanity was so dangerous. I ended understanding that humanity is dangerous because they care deeply enough to fight for what they believe in. Other species developed compassion through abundance. Humanity developed compassion despite scarcity. Other species see violence as aberration. Humanity sees violence as a tool to be controlled and used only when necessary. This makes them terrifying. This also makes them essential. I watched humanity fight, and I understood why the galaxy feared them. But I also watched humanity protect, and I understood why the galaxy needs them. The question was never whether humans are dangerous. The question is dangerous to whom? To those who prey on the weak, to those who threaten the innocent, to those who believe might makes right. Yes, humans are extremely dangerous. But to those who seek protection, to those who value justice, to those who believe in defending the defenseless, humans are the safest allies possible. I no longer fear humanity. I am grateful for them. That is my final conclusion. The story ended with a view from orbit above a Federation world. 3 human vessels patrolled the system: the Indomitable Spirit, the Resolute Dawn, and the Defiant Hope. Below them, millions of aliens slept peacefully, protected by those who chose to stand watch. On the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, Captain Dayun sat in her command chair.